Hell, March 13th, 1919. Esteemed mortal, they have never caught me, and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. I am not a human being, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orleanians and your foolish police call the Axeman. When I see fit, I shall come and claim other victims. I alone know whom they shall be. I shall leave no clue except my bloody axe, besmeared with blood and brains of he whom I have sent below to keep me company.
Oh my God, we're burning alive!
It's okay.
Oh, do you want the headphones?
It's fine.
All right. Fiends, fellow ghosts, goblins, and spooky skeletons, lend me your ears. My name is Nate, and with me is my co-host, a man who, for him, every day is Halloween, Ivan. And we welcome you, our dear listener, to the Monster Mash of podcasts, also known as Super Mystery Bros. I'm still getting over a horrendous cold that I've had for the past 5 days or so, and I'm still really congested, and I just have some unbelievable brain fog and fatigue, but the show must go on, and Ivan is here with me tonight, risking his life in the face of what allegedly might be COVID, just to make sure that this one gets published in time. I'm also wearing a mask so that I'm not spraying coronavirus into Ivan's eyeballs. And so before you go trick-or-treating and throwing rolls of toilet paper over people's houses, getting wasted on Jell-O shots at some stranger's house, and inevitably calling out sick to work tomorrow, we wanted to give you a treat of our own to get you all into the Halloween spirit. Ivan, what can people do to assist us in our ghostly voyage into the dark and spooky world of the unknown?
Oh, that's easy, man. Guys, our dear listeners, just leave a rating and review, and preferably positive review, okay? 5 stars at least, and tell your friends, your family, your relatives, everyone. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be positive, man. You can be a hater too. You can be a hater and you just want to bring us down. That's fine too. Just do it.
Just do it every episode, right? Then
well, they have to rate the show itself, not every episode.
Okay, got
so,
it.
And how can people get in touch with us?
We got an email, supermysterybrospodcast@gmail.com, and also Instagram, Spooky Nate, something like that.
Spooky Nate 69.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can also say Super Mystery Bros 5 times in a row while staring into their bathroom mirror if they want to summon us in our ghostly apparitional form. And they can also leave us a voice message using the anchor.fm link in the episode description. So, all right, man, are you ready to get started on this episode?
Of course, let's get it started.
All right, man. Well, like always, we're going to talk a little bit about where this story all takes place. New Orleans, or the Big Easy as it's known. Known for being one of the oldest cities in the continental United States, its culture is rich and vibrant. Its past stained with the tears of those who have long since passed on. A present tainted with the echoes of the barbaric practice of slavery, and its streets, from time to time, painted with blood. Nowadays, it's a place world famous for where drunk college girls go to show their naked boobies to strangers in exchange for some shitty plastic beads. But beyond the glistening, vomit-covered pavement of Bourbon Street during Mardi Gras, New Orleans has much more to offer. Although it was devastated by Hurricane Katrina in August of 2005, its people have always been known to be resilient in the face of adversity, and the city has since rebounded quite well despite the apocalyptic devastation. Few other places on the continental United States can challenge it when it comes to the strength of its character and its iconic flavor and soul. Today, New Orleans stands as a testament to the fortitude of the U.S. and, despite its many tragedies, has picked itself up and moved forward consistently throughout its long and storied history. You know, I always wanted to move to New Orleans and play the clarinet in a jazz band, man.
You did?
No. In the late 1910s, America was reeling from the tail end of the bloodiest conflict that the modern Western world had ever seen up until that point, the Great War as it was known then, or to us in modern times, the First World War, in which over 116,000 of America's finest and bravest did not return home alive. In a time where mass media was still in its infancy, few residents of New Orleans were prepared for the wave of terror that was to come, with most of its victims being too innocent to know that such evil even existed outside of the pits of hell itself. Amongst the backdrop of picturesque French colonial architecture, Spanish moss hanging peacefully from live oak trees, plumes of smoke rising skyward from steam-powered ships on the Mississippi River, and the ringing bells of old-timey trolleys carrying around crowds of Orleanians as they engaged in life's activities, lurked an unseen evil, an evil so cruel and merciless that not a single soul was prepared.
So, I got a couple of questions, man. First of all, have you ever been to New Orleans?
I have not, but I would love to go.
Yeah, me too. The second question, what are those shitty plastic beads, man?
What do you mean, what are they? You buy them at the shitty plastic bead store, and then on Mardi Gras, the drunk college girls show you their boobs for
plastic
in exchange for the beads. Yeah, that's a new Mardi Gras tradition. You never heard of it?
No, kind of cool. Shit.
Yeah. What a country.
Okay. May 22nd, 1918. Andrew Maggio, a barber who worked in New Orleans, returned home at around 2 a.m. after a long night of getting shit-faced drunk in celebration of his coming departure to join the US Navy. Andrew, who shared the home with his brother Jake, quietly climbed into his bed, as not to wake his brother, who was fast asleep. In the adjacent residence, Joseph Maggio, a local grocer who was also Andrew's brother, slumbered peacefully in his bed along with his wife, Catherine, at 1901 Magnolia Street, which was at the corner of Magnolia Street and Upper Line Street. At around 4 a.m., Jake Maggio was awoken by the sounds of groaning. Listening carefully, it seemed to him that the sound was coming from Joseph and Catherine residence. Concerned, he pounded on the wall, but received no response. Ultimately, he got up of the bed and went to check on them to make sure that they were okay. As he entered the couple's room, he was shocked and horrified by what he saw. Joseph and Catherine were lying in bed, surrounded by blood. Catherine, by this point, had already stopped breathing. But Joseph was still alive, but barely. He had a huge hole in his head. Lying diagonally across the bed, with his feet touching the floor, was the body of Joseph Maggio, wrote the New Orleans States in the afternoon's edition. Quote, on the floor, alongside the bed and resting across the feet of her husband, lay the dead body of his wife. The floor and bed were smeared with blood. The man was not yet dead. Jake Maggio summoned the police while Andrew telephoned for the charity hospital ambulance. He died shortly after the arrival of the interns from the hospital.
Yeah, so I want to note here that online sources here had no consistent information. I could not ascertain whether or not Jake and Andrew lived in the same house as Joe and his wife Catherine, or if it was in the home next door, as all the information conflicted with each other. But in any case, they lived in very close proximity. And, you know, I actually pulled this house up on Google Street View. Mm-hmm. It's right on the corner. And I also dug up this old photo of the house. And the house appears to be the same building now as it was back in in the 1900s. So it looks like it was remodeled, but it's still the same building. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
It is.
Joseph and Catherine's throats had each been slit. Catherine's throat had been cut so deeply that she had nearly been decapitated. Both victims had then been bashed in the head with an axe, which was found still bloody in the bathroom of the residence. Police also found a heap of bloody clothes laying out in the open of the residence. The killer had apparently brought a change of clothes with him and changed out of his bloody clothes before leaving. It was discovered that the rear door to the residence was carefully pried open using a screwdriver before entrance was gained by the intruder. Police found the bloody razor used in the crime discarded in a neighboring yard. Upon questioning, Andrew Maggio admitted that it was his. Being a barber, he claimed to have brought it home because, according to him, he wanted to take out a nick that was in the blade. Police immediately suspected Andrew of being the killer and brought him in for questioning. During questioning, police found it odd that Andrew was not able to hear any commotion happening in regards to a horrific murder happening next door, along with the fact that Andrew's own razor had apparently been used in the attack. Police also believe that he used the axe simply to cover up the fact that he had killed them both with the razor. However, Andrew maintained his innocence, reiterating that he had been intoxicated at the time, which is why he did not wake up while a murder was taking place next door.
Ultimately, the razor was proved to not actually be the one that Andrew took home to repair, and he was freed and eventually cleared of being a suspect. It was shortly after this that police received numerous reports of a suspicious man standing nearby by the residence shortly before the murders. Robbery had been ruled out as a motive, as nothing appeared to be stolen and police had no solid suspects. Ominously, a message written in chalk appeared in front of Maggio's grocery store, reading, quote, "Mrs. Maggio will sit up tonight, just like Mrs. Tony," end quote. Police dug into past incidents with parallels to this crime and discovered that in 1911, 4 similar axe murders cases took place. All the victims were grocers. The last victim of which was a woman married to a man named Tony Sciambra. Therefore, a connection was made and police theorized that this is who the message written in chalk was referring to.
Coincidence?
I don't think so.
In an odd twist to the story, on May 26, 4 days after the attack, police detectives Harry Dodson and Theodore Obitz were sitting on a stoop located at the corner of Barron Street and Calliope Street, just several blocks east of where the Maggios were killed. A man approached them, and allegedly, when the officers began to question him about the murders, a gun battle erupted, and Obitz was shot through the heart and killed. Later, 2 other men, later proven to be innocent, were also shot dead, having been mistaken for the gunmen. The involved police subsequently faced no consequences. Dude, can you fucking believe that shit, dude? So they were just chasing this guy who was running away because he didn't want to be questioned about the murders. And then the police ended up shooting 2 other people, just innocent people that they mistook for the gunman.
Fucked up.
God, dude. 4 days later, teenager Frank Bailey was arrested as a suspect in the murder of Officer Obitz. Bailey confessed to some robberies and being the one who shot Obitz, but at trial he said he admitted to it only while under torture while being interrogated by police. He didn't deny firing his gun during the shootout, but claimed that it was the other officer, Dodson, who shot him on accident. He was convicted and sentenced to death. Before being hung in the gallows, he said the following, quote, "Detective Harry Dodson, partner of Obitz, was the man who killed him. One of the bullets fired by Dodson struck Obitz in the head as he was shooting at me. I fired 3 shots as I ran, but I'm sure none of them took effect. I fired as I ran and could not take aim," end quote. He was executed on August 13th, 1920, having been only 18 years old at the time.
That's brutal, man.
Yeah, all right, so let's just break this down for a minute. So the Axeman goes into the Maggio residence. He murders the 2 people in the Maggio residence, and then just through the butterfly effect, This incident caused the police to shoot 2 more innocent people to death. And then also the other police officer, so that's 5 people total, died because of what the Axeman did, kind of just through, osmosis or something, I guess you would call it. And then whether or not you believe this, what's his name? Frank Bailey. If you believe Frank Bailey was innocent, that could total 6 innocent people just sprouted up dead from this one incident. So this is fucking crazy to me, man.
Satanic. On June 27th, 1918, just over a month after the Maggios were killed, a grocery store owner named Louis Bessemer became the X-Men's next target. Bessemer, who lived in the quarters directly behind his grocery store, located at the corner of Bourgeois and La Harpe Street, was only a few short miles away from the Maggios. He was spending the night with his mistress, also known as, quote, side chick, end quote, Harriet Lowe. While sleeping together in bed late that night, someone had snuck into his residence with sinister intentions. Using a hatchet, the intruder struck Bessemer above his right temple and Lowe over her left ear before fleeing the scene. John Zenka, a wagon driver, discovered the 2 lying in a pool of their own blood at around 7 a.m. Both were still alive, but badly injured. Harriet Lowe, upon being questioned after the attack, described the attacker as a mulatto man, a 41-year-old African-American man named Lewis Obicon.
Louis Obicon, I guess?
Louis Obicon, who worked in Bessemer's grocery store, gave conflicting accounts of his whereabouts on the night when questioned by police. Ultimately, police released him as they could not find any evidence linking him to the crime. The local newspapers had a field day with this story, as they thought that Bessemer's relationship with his mistress was a giant scandal, and began reporting on his life. However, Harriet Lowe did nothing but fan the flames of the media frenzy, as she made conflicting statements on the attack. And about Bessemer, the police, having found letters in Bessemer's home written in Russian, German, and Yiddish, became suspicious of Bessemer, which when questioned, Harriet Lowe confirmed that Bessemer was a spy for Kaiser Wilhelm II.
Kaiser Wilhelm II.
Just over a month later, on August 5th, 1918, she passed away following surgical complications to fix the paralysis caused by the X-Men's attack. On her deathbed, she claimed that it was Bessemer who had attacked her with the axe.
So just as a side note here, Bessemer was ultimately cleared of any espionage, and also a jury found him not guilty in the assault against Harriet Lowe. So I wanted to ask you, man, do you think that she claimed that he attacked her just as a way to fuck him over, or do you think that she really believed that it was him that attacked her? Whether that was like the honest truth, whether he attacked her, or do you think that maybe she had some sort of brain damage and that caused her to misremember the incident?
It really depends on many factors too, man. First of all, I would think about what was the situation. Then the X-Men entered their room. They were what angle she was laying at, and where she was looking, and these things.
And that's going to be really hard to know.
It's going to be really hard
because it's so long ago. But also, it just makes me think that maybe she just misremembered the incident, and she just decided to say, "Oh, it was my." It was Kaiser. What's the guy's name again?
Bessemer.
Bessemer. Sorry.
So you and the other thing is the Bessemer. He should have been kind of a little bit mental, man, to struck himself in the head, or first her then himself. It's kind of it's
true. He's striking himself in the right temple.
And he didn't seem to be the guy to do that. I mean, from the info that we got here, at least.
I don't think that it was him either. I think that she either misremembered because she got hit in the head with a fucking axe, or she said that because she wanted to fuck him over for some reason.
And they just had a good time. No reason to to hit yourself with the axe.
That's true.
On the head.
We don't know what he did prior to the incident. So
yeah.
Right. Well, let's continue. On the very same day that Harriet Lowe passed away, the Axeman would set his sights on his next victim. In the evening hours of August 5th, 1918, a 28-year-old, 8-month pregnant woman by the name of Anna Schneider, who lived on Elmira Street, awoke to a horrifying sight: a dark figure standing over her bed. Before she even had a chance to scream, the man smashed her head with what police believed to be a lamp, and then for Anna, it was lights out. Her husband Ed came home from work late that night, after midnight, to discover that his wife was laying in bed with her face covered in blood. Anna was still alive, but unfortunately remembered nothing from the attack and could not describe her attacker in any detail. Her husband Ed stated to the police that only $6 or $7 that had been in his wallet was stolen from the residence. None of the windows or doors had been forced open. The police, by this time, arrested an ex-convict by the name of James Gleason, who fled from authorities. Having no actual evidence against him, he was released, and it stated that the only reason he ran away from the police was because he was often arrested. Police were dumbfounded. They had no leads, but were already speculating at this time that all of the attacks were linked to the same offender. They also speculated that the offender was changing his modus operandi by attacking someone who was not Italian nor a grocer, in an effort to not be caught. Police began to fear that nobody in the city was safe from the Axeman's wrath. So you'll be happy to know that Anna gave birth to a healthy baby girl just 2 days after her ordeal, and she lived to tell the tale. So, Ivan, what do you think about his behavior and how he's evolving? Do you think that he's escalating?
Definitely. I would say it's an escalation. Or either I would agree with police that it might have been just the way for him to... he had to do something differently not to get caught. I think it's a good point.
Sort of disguise his MO to make it seem like it might have been somebody else who did this.
But it makes, if he actually did it, it makes him even more sinister in a way, more psychopathic.
Yeah, I believe that this attack was from him. So why don't you continue on?
Just 5 days after the attack on Anna Schneider on August 10th, 1918, an elderly man named Joseph Romano, who lived with his 2 nieces, Pauline and Mary Bruno, at the corner of Tonti Street and Gravier Street, slept peacefully in his bed. At some point during the night, the 2 sisters woke up to some sort of commotion coming from their Joseph's room. Concerned for their uncle's well-being, they both headed upstairs to his room and upon entering, witnessed a dark-skinned, heavy-set man wearing a dark suit and slouched hat fleeing, and found him in bed with serious head wound. He died 2 days later from his injuries. Police were unable to find any of Joseph's personal items missing, but they did find a bloody axe in the garden of the residence and had discovered that the back door panel had been chiseled away in order for the offender to gain entry into the house. 2 days after the attack, a reporter from the New Orleans Item interviewed the man's neighbors at his funeral and learned that most of them were not sleeping at night anymore. Some were arming themselves and all were keeping their doors locked. Quote, "Night has been turned into a day for many New Orleans," end quote, the paper wrote. By this point, the entire city of New Orleans was under panic. Newspapers began to dub the unknown offender, quote, "the Axeman of New Orleans," end quote, and police would receive several calls a day with reports of men walking around neighborhoods carrying an axe. And many men would arm themselves with guns and keep watch over their families while they slept. The paranoia began to spread around the city, like gonorrhea at the whorehouse. Man, come on. Months and months went by with no sign of the Axeman. Orleans began to slowly ease back into their normal lives. The fear and paranoia began to subside. The murderer seemed to have vanished into the thin air. The city of New Orleans cautiously breathed a sigh of relief after each month passed without seeing another axe murder. Many people in New Orleans began to wonder whether they had finally seen the last of the Axeman. They hadn't.
March 11th, 1919. 7 months had passed since the brutal attack on Joseph Romano. On the corner of Jefferson Avenue and 2nd Street in Gretna, which is just south of New Orleans, on the other side of the Mississippi River, lived the Cortamiglias, an Italian-American family of grocers. Patriarch Charles, along with his wife Rosie and their 2-year-old daughter Mary, made up the household. An unknown assailant began by chiseling out the back door panel and using an axe obtained from the victim's household, began to attack the family. Charles unsuccessfully tried to fight back against the Axeman as Rosie woke up to witness the scene. Charles received multiple blows to the head, receiving a fractured skull. The Axeman then set his sights on Rosie. Neighbors heard loud screaming coming from the Cortamiglia residence and rushed over to investigate. The first neighbor to arrive on the scene was Orlando Giordano. Mr. Giordano found that Charles, Rosie, and Mary had all been savagely attacked. Charles and Rosie were both still alive, but the 2-year-old daughter Mary had been killed by a blow to the back of her head while in her mother's arms. The axe which was used in this attack was found propped up on the back porch, a signature to let those in New Orleans know that the Axeman had returned. Upon regaining consciousness, Rosie told police that Orlando and his son Frank were the ones who were behind the attack, but Charles disputes this, just saying that his wife was wrong and neither of the two individuals would have committed the attacks. Orlando was 69 years old at the time and in poor health, and his son Frank was over 6 feet tall and weighed over 200 pounds. However, the police still decided to arrest the two men and charge them with murder. Ultimately, Frank was sentenced to death, and his father, Orlando, was sentenced to life in prison. However, over a year after their convictions, Rosie recounted her testimony against the two men, having admitted that she made it up, and that she blamed the two men simply out of jealousy and spite, due to them being rival grocers. The two men were released from prison, and Charles ultimately ended up divorcing her shortly afterwards. All right, so I think we should break that down because that's some crazy shit. So what happened was the Axeman broke into this family's house, attacked the husband, his wife, and the kid. The kid got killed, and she decided to blame the attack on these rival grocers that were completely innocent, and one of the men was sentenced to death. So it's hard for me to feel sorry for this lady, and her husband rightfully, in my opinion, divorced her for it. Can you believe that shit?
It's
fucking crazy shit.
Insane.
You're not reacting. It's like it's kind of like, am I the only one who understands how fucking psycho that is?
It is really psycho, but is there any way that could have been them? No.
Well, no, she admitted that she made it up. She admitted that she made it up because they were rival grocers. And she was jealous of them.
Man, that's just, I don't know. I have no words. It's just
oh my god, dude.
Insane.
That's the kind of shit that would turn me into an axe murderer if I wasn't already.
Come
on. All right, well, let's continue on. Only a couple days after the attack on the Cortamiglias, a letter arrived at the Times-Picayune newspaper written by the Axeman. It reads as follows: Hell, March 13th, 1919. Esteemed mortal, they have never caught me, and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. I am not a human being, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orleanians and your foolish police call the Axeman. When I see fit, I shall come and claim other victims. I alone know whom they shall be. I shall leave no clue except my bloody axe, besmeared with blood and brains of he whom I have sent below to keep me company. If you wish, you may tell the police to be careful not to rile me. Of course, I am a reasonable spirit. I take no offense at the way that they have conducted their investigations in the past. In fact, they have been so utterly stupid as to not only amuse me, but his satanic majesty, Francis Joseph, etc. But tell them to beware. Let them not try to discover what I am, for it were better that they were never born than to incur the wrath of the Axeman. I don't think that there is any need of such a warning, for I feel sure that the police will always dodge me, as they have in the past. They are wise and know how to keep away from all harm. Undoubtedly, you Orleanians think of me as a most horrible murderer, which I am, but I could be much worse if I wanted to. If I wished, I could pay a visit to your city every night. At will, I could slay thousands of your best citizens, for I am in close relationship with the angel of death. Now, to be exact, at 12:15 earthly time on next Tuesday night, I'm going to pass over New Orleans. In my infinite mercy, I'm going to make a little proposition to you people. Here it is. I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well, then so much the better for you people. One thing is certain, and that is that some of your people who do not jazz it out on that specific Tuesday night, if there will be any, will get the axe. Well, as I am cold and crave the warmth of my native Tartarus, and it is about time I leave your earthly home, I will cease my discourse, hoping that thou wilt publish this, that it may go well with thee. I have been, am, and will be the worst spirit that ever existed, either in fact or realm of fantasy. The Axeman. March 18th came, and according to accounts, was the loudest night in New Orleans history, with jazz clubs being filled with terrified Orleanians and households blaring jazz through their phonograms all night long. All right, man, so there's a lot to unpack there, and I wanted to ask you, what do you make of the letter that the Axeman wrote? Because what I took from that letter is this guy has a penchant for theatrics. Like, this guy seems incredibly narcissistic and just egomaniacal. Like, what did you take from it? Did you make anything from that?
I mean, if the letter is real, let's think it's a real letter. He's also kind of delusional, right? And has and thinks of himself as something similar to the devil himself.
Yeah,
he's like
he could be delusional, or he could be writing this way in order to freak everybody out. That's kind of what I took from it. I mean, I'm not convinced that he believes himself to be an actual demon spirit. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, I think that he's doing this because he wants everyone to think that there's some devil that came to Earth.
What's in your opinion crazier? If he's delusional or is him being theatrical and shit? What's worse?
I think that if he's just acting would almost be more scary, because that means that there's some guy who's able to pretend to be sane, living a somewhat normal life somewhere, and then by night he's an axe murderer. I think that's scarier to me than just have, because like, if this guy's truly delusional, I don't think he's going to be able to hide that from the people around him.
And to
Does that make sense?
And to be like well calculated and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So I think to me this letter just sounds like too theatrical, and he's talking like in this very Shakespearean way. To me, it's very pompous. He's very pompous and theatrical with this letter. Mm-hmm. But it had the effect, and it's freaked the fuck out of everyone in New Orleans.
Again, several months passed. Some Orleanians thought that the Axeman may finally have gone away. That is, until August 10th, 1919. On this night, grocer Steve Boca woke up to find that a dark figure was standing over him while he laid in bed. Before he knew what even happened, he lost consciousness. Boca soon woke up and ran into the street before realizing that his head had been cracked open. He immediately ran to his neighbor Frank Genusa's home before collapsing unconscious on his floor. Fortunately for Steve, he recovered, but could not remember any further details about the attack. Police investigated the scene and found that the back panel of his door had been pried open, much like the earlier attacks, and they knew that the Axeman had returned. Sarah Lauman, a 19-year-old girl that lived alone, was the next to be attacked by the Axeman. On September 3rd, 1919, neighbors arrived at her home and found that she was not responding to any of their knocks. Fearing for her safety, they broke into the home and looked for her. Then they opened her bedroom door. They found her lying unconscious in her bed with horrific head injury and several missing teeth. Police concluded that the attacker entered into Sarah's residence through an open window and attacked her with some sort of blunt instrument. A search of the property found a bloody X on the front lawn, a signature to let the police know that it was the Axeman who did this. Much like other victims, Sarah recovered, but could not remember no details of the attack.
The last known attack by the Axeman occurred on October 27th, 1919. On this night, Mike Pepitone, along with his wife Ezra, who both operated a corner store at South Scott and Ulloa Streets, were sleeping in their beds. At some point late in the night, Ezra woke up to her husband screaming, "Oh my God!" Worried, she got up to investigate it, and while making her way down the hall to Mike's bedroom, she was horrified to see a large, axe-wielding man walking toward the back of the home, through the room where their 6 children were sleeping, and then who escaped through the back door. Unfortunately for Mike, he had been struck in the head 18 times with the axe, and according to the Times-Picayune, quote, "It was battered into an almost unrecognizable mass," end quote. Mike was in utter agony. According to Ezra's account, quote, "Every time he turned his head, blood came from his head and face. It simply poured over the bed," end quote. Throwing open a window and screaming for help, Ezra tried desperately to save her husband, but it was no use. Mike ended up passing away in the hospital 2 hours later.
Ezra later moved to Los Angeles, where she married a man by the name of Angelo Albano. On the second anniversary of her ex-husband's murder, October 27th, 1921, Albano mysteriously disappeared. A name by the name of Joseph Mumphrey, who used to have business relations with Angelo, went to Easter's home on December 5th, 1921, and demanded $500 and her jewelry. He threatened to kill her the same way he had killed her husband, which was referring to Angelo. Esther, during the ordeal, ran to her bedroom, grabbed a .38 caliber revolver, and unloaded the entire gun into Mumphrey's as he struggled to free his own gun out from his pocket. Mumphrey was struck multiple times and fell backwards and tumbled down the staircase. Easter then went back into her room, grabbed another .38 caliber revolver, and emptied that one into him as well. Mumphrey ended up passing away peacefully while lying at the bottom of the staircase. Peacefully, man. Some speculate that it was Ether who killed her first husband, caused her second husband Angelo's disappearance, and the third man's death. Mumphrey, all in cold blood. And that the attack against her first husband was not actually due to the Axeman. The Axeman of New Orleans was never seen nor heard from again, and nobody knows for certain who he was.
Wow, man. Well, that story scared the crap out of me. I don't know about you. All right, man. Well, what are your thoughts on this case? Who do you think this guy could have been? What kind of person do you think would have done this?
definitely not the ordinary person, you know.
Well, no shit, man.
He's probably like psychopathic and stuff, because the way he did it was so well planned and calculated, and also the fact that he actually chose almost every time he chose similar victims, like they were grocery store
Italian grocers.
Italian grocers.
They were all, most of them were Italian grocers, which is really weird. Why would somebody single out Italian grocers of all people? It's such a random.
It makes you wonder what might have happened, right? What might have happened
Does he have
to
a
that
beef
guy?
against Italian grocers, or do you think that Italian grocers were just a convenient victim for him?
Yeah, I mean, I dug up some info about the serial killers and their motivations, and on that site. Oh,
It's fine.
according to the article on Office of Justice Program, in 1998, Holmes and Holmes, interesting names, developed a serial murder classification, and they got visionary killer, mission killer, hedonistic killer, and power or control killer. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think our guy was? Probably, maybe.
What was the first one?
Visionary.
Visionary.
It's like, if you, according to the info, it's something like that you have a mission from God or something, or from Satan, and you're trying to clean the earth of some bad people or whatever.
Okay, I see what you mean. I could see how some people, if they were asked that question, would say visionary killer, but in my opinion, I think this was all power and control.
Power control.
Yeah, and I think that I mean, it's hard for me to get into the mind of this guy, but to me, what it sounds like is that he got off on just the sheer amount of terror that he was causing the city. And I think that, like, especially the letter, the way he wrote this flamboyant Shakespearean style letter claiming to be a demon from hell. And I think that he also got off on the fact that he was able to make everyone in the city play jazz music at the exact time that he wanted them to. And I think that he was probably sitting back laughing his ass off at the entire thing as this was going on, while everybody else was sitting in their house terrified, playing jazz music as loud as they can. And I think to him, it was probably really entertaining. And I think that for him, this was all about power, control, and in my mind, I could see this guy being somebody who, when they were a kid, went through some serious fucking trauma, and it probably warped their mind and created this monster that just wanted to take out all of his anger on innocent people, basically.
But I would say that he seemed to have a mission to. He had a mission. It's like a revenge against Italian grocery store owners or something like that.
Yeah, I guess you
can say both, I think.
Yeah, I think you can make the argument that he might have been a little bit of both. But
Yeah.
if you were to ask me to pick one, though, I would choose the power and control one.
Yeah, and why I also think about the mission killer. Again, I don't know if it's a reliable source like Psychology Today or whatever. In their article, they wrote that some mission-oriented killers believe that by terminating the life of the victim, which is usually done in ritualistic manner. The ritualistic manner kind of got me, because he was really ritualistic in his.
I guess you could.
It was the quote by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so, honestly. And the reason why I say I don't think so is because I think that the way he chose to kill his victims by sneaking into their house late at night and then killing them with the most brutal weapon imaginable, an axe. I mean, that's, to me, there's almost nothing scarier than that, is somebody quietly breaking into your house in the middle of the night and then splitting your head open like a cantaloupe with an axe. So I think that he chose this method just simply because it was the most terrifying way of doing things.
So you don't think it's a ritual? Like some medieval sort of
dude,
rituals,
I'm not a police detective or anything like that. But to me,
I know.
when I imagine this guy, he's probably doing this because he wants to inflict the maximum amount of fear that he can. And I think that he got this like God complex after doing it a couple times. And yeah, I think that's who this guy was. He was somebody who craved power and control, and yeah, and for whatever reason, he probably felt powerless when he was a kid, maybe.
For example, he definitely is not like an ordinary person with conflicting emotions, whatever, right? Because he got it all
Probably not.
planned and calculated. I think he was cold-minded.
Have you heard of the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez?
What about him?
So, if you haven't heard of him, he was a serial killer in the 1980s. And what he would do is he operated in the Los Angeles area.
Mm-hmm.
And what he would do is he would break into just random people's houses, and he would just commit brutal fucking attacks on people, on sometimes entire families. I mean, everything from sexual assaults to torture and just like murdering people in the most horrific ways imaginable. He eventually got caught, though. That's the difference. But he was a Satanist too, so I could imagine that this guy might have been kind of like a Richard Ramirez type of guy, where he thought that he had power from Satan or something like that.
Yeah.
I could imagine.
So I think he's kind of a mix of everything, right? A mixed.
Yeah, I would say
motivations.
maybe like 75-80% power and control to me. And then maybe like 20% visionary, or maybe like a couple percent of, what was the other one?
Mission killer.
Yeah, that's what I would go with.
Mission killer. Yeah, I would lean.
I just have no idea why he chose Italian grocers. It's such a random.
I would lean a little bit like further on the side of the mission killer, because he was pretty consistent. Not all the time, but you can rule it out because he was trying like to disguise himself or something to hide from police.
Maybe. I mean,
so
dude,
I would lean into the mission thing a little bit more. Maybe I'll give it like 60% or
60.
No, 40% to the mission guy.
That high, huh?
To the mission killer, then 30% to the power and control, and then the 30% to the visionary, probably some weird shit.
30% visionary, huh?
Yeah, because I mean, remember his letter got me really impressed because of the satanic way he was writing about himself and stuff.
But to me, I think he was writing that more. I mean, fuck, it's hard for me to know.
It's really hard.
But in my mind, I kind of think that he wrote it that way because he wanted to inflict the maximum amount of fear and panic that he could. And if the people of New Orleans thought that there was some satanic maniac running around who was sent from the pits of hell. You got to remember also, like the early 1900s, people took that kind of shit a lot more seriously than they do now. So I think that, I think that he did that on purpose. Everything was kind of calculated. And I think it's the power and control element here is a far higher percentage than I think that you give it credit for. Just my opinion though.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of why I think that he said that he would spare anyone playing jazz music.
Oh yeah, control here. Yeah.
To me,
I forgot that part.
To me, that's a very telling piece of evidence to support that he was a power and control kind of guy. So yeah, I don't necessarily know or believe whether or not he really liked jazz music, but I think that he got some sort of sick satisfaction by making the entire city play jazz music at this exact same time.
Yes, I'll give 10% more for the control.
Okay.
Because it's a good point about the jazz music.
Yeah.
And it actually worked, so probably.
Yeah, it was a fucking power move. It was a power move, in my opinion. So yeah, man. Do you have any final thoughts about this guy before we get out of here?
Yeah, I don't know if we can. We talked about his character, but I don't think we can solve the.
Yeah, this one's way too open ended.
Yeah,
there's not a lot. It's just way too much of a sandbox to sift through.
But I think we did well talking about his character. So.
Yeah, man, this guy was a sick son of a bitch. So. All right, man. Do you have any clarifications to make, apologies or shout outs before we go?
Not this time, man. And happy Halloween, everyone. I guess.
Okay, all right. Shout out to Halloween. All right, well, I've got kind of a shout out to give. It looks like we might have already garnered a few fans organically, just judging from our play analytics. So I don't know anybody in these locations, so I wanted to just give a shout out to a few cities out there who they seem to be listening to us on a regular basis. So shout out to New York, New York, Los Angeles, California, Cheyenne, Wyoming, Ashburn, Virginia, Dallas, Texas, and Las Vegas, Nevada. Ivan and I, we both thank you all for listening. This is kind of like our twice a month little weekend hobby that we do. And if there are like 6 people out there listening to us on a regular basis, I mean, to us, that's fucking huge. I mean, I didn't expect that many people to listen. And at this point, I would have expected maybe 2 listeners that don't have any connection to us personally. But the fact that we might have 6 people out there listening, fucking wow, man. All right, man, I think it's time to get out of here. Like candy corn through a hole in the bottom of a dirty pillowcase, so too are the minutes of our podcast. But don't fret, dear listener. We'll be back again to breathe new life into an old mystery next time.
Помните, ребята, истина прячется в тени. Вместе мы найдем ее.
This is Super Mystery Bros.